Chats with Firefighters. The men and women behind the helmet. Episode 2. David Hall, retired fire chief in Springfield, Missouri. Hi, David.
How are you doing today?
I'm good. So nice talking to you today. And thank you for being with us. And here's David Hall, retired fire chief in Springfield, Missouri, and currently director of facilities management in Missouri State University. Am I right?
That is correct. Yeah. Thanks for having me on today.
Thank you so much. And I would love to talk to you about all your experience because obviously you had a very long career in the fire service. And I would love to begin talking about, how you got to be a firefighter. It looks like you were a volunteer firefighter first, and then you got your career up to the top fire chief. So I would love you to talk about that.
Yeah, I will tell you, I lived in a small town in south central Missouri at Mountain Grove, Missouri. And I just worked at a grocery store and got off one evening, and we were told that some of our closest friends' house was on fire just outside of town. And so, like everybody else, I kind of drove out by there, was sitting there watching. This was late at night, and the flames were through the roof, and the fire engines were coming in, spraying their water and going back and refilling and coming back. And I sat there and I felt so helpless in watching our friend's house burn. Now, fortunately, nobody was hurt on that. They were away on vacation, actually. And so the next week, I was 21 years old. The next week, I went down and I joined the volunteer fire department. And I didn't really know what I was getting into or anything like that. And but got involved in it and really enjoyed and found it very enjoyable as part of it. Went and got my emergency medical technician license as well, because we ran a lot of medical calls. Again, not that we ran a lot of calls anyway, because it's just a small community. But as part of that, we had a retired deputy chief out of Elgin, Illinois, suburb of Chicago, who was our training chief down there. And one point he told me, he says, David, you're pretty good at this. Have you ever considered doing it for a living? And I like telling that story because that had never crossed my mind. And I still vividly remember him saying that because I had never considered that. And that one statement changed my life.
Wow.
It truly changed my life. And so I went, came up to Springfield, which is about an hour away. It's a area. It's got about a 200,000 population, and had a career fire department. And so I applied for it and was fortunate to able to get on with it. So I tell that story to many in the fire service and outside the fire service is you never know what you're going to say to somebody that can truly impact the rest of their life. Something as simple as that, he said, is, hey, you've got some real ability here. Have you ever considered that?
That's beautiful. Strangers can tell very impactful things to you. It wasn't a stranger in your case, but even like strangers in the street can just like see something in your soul and just say something one day and you're like, oh, wow, that marks your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you remember his name?
Yeah, Chuck Myers. And what's funny is I wished he had passed away whenever I went to reach out, because I kind of kept in touch with him after I'd got on Springfield, but I hadn't promoted up to the chief officer level yet. And I always wanted to go back to let him know here's the impact that he had, not only on my life, but also on our organization there at the fire department.
Wow. Yeah, that's beautiful. And you were 21, you said?
I was 21 at the time. I got married young. I was in high school when I got married, immediately had children. Yeah.
I want to hear that story.
It's always fascinating. So I didn't have two nickels to rub together, making $2.90 an hour and feeding a family of four. And it was really tough in the things that we did. And that's why I say it changed my life, because even as a starting pay of a firefighter, which, at that time was around $19,400. And it was like, this is unbelievable.
Yeah, at the time it still meant money.
Yeah, it did. And it also, it's the opportunities that opened up. So I got on the fire department when I was the career fire department at the age of 27. The year that I took the test, there was 490 applicants, and they hired 6 of us.
Wow.
And so it's very competitive. And it was like I'm working 24 hours on and 48 hours off. Every firefighter typically has an off-duty job. I'd never had so much time off. You know, you got paid vacation and sick leave and things like that. And so I went to school because I'd always wanted to go to college, but that was not in my cards at that time. But at the age of 27, now I had enough time that I could do that. So I went to school 2 days a week, taking 15 to 21 credit hours a semester, and took vacation and just studied all the time and went through in 4 years and got my degree. So
Wow.
it afforded me that opportunity.
That's
So that's
beautiful.
why I say it changed my life.
And strong
for the
mind.
fact of
You have a
doing
strong
that.
mind.
I'm a hard
Yeah.
worker, and so I like being busy. I like challenges, and I was working part time, going to school full time, and working 56 hours a week. So I was a busy guy.
Busy. I mean, it sounds like you're still a busy guy. We'll talk about that a little later on, but you are a very busy person. Yes.
Yes, I don't like idle hands.
Yeah.
So I like being doing something.
So from 21 to 27, were you a volunteer firefighter?
Yeah.
And then as a volunteer firefighter, you applied. You are still a volunteer firefighter when you applied to be a professional.
Yeah, I did. So what's interesting about the fire service, and it's different all across the country, but there's also similarities. So when I started at this small town of 3,500 people is how many lived in the town. So we had the city fire department. I volunteered on it. We had about 20 of us that were on the department at any one time. And then we had the rural fire department. And the rural, which was the same firefighters, they just got on a different piece of equipment in order to respond outside the city because it was what's called a subscription fire department. There's not many of those in the country, particularly today, and it still is subscription in that you paid, at that time, you paid your $15 a year subscription dues, and you were a member of that, so they'd respond to your house if it was on fire or your grass fire.
Oh.
And so, yes, there was no tax support.
Oh, everybody in town had just like the opportunity to pay a little bit of money every year to have their house protected by the fire department.
Well, actually, in the city, it was funded by their taxes, their property taxes. But outside the city, there was no fire department outside the city other than this subscription department. So, and that's the ones that paid to have protection. So you might have one neighbor that paid dues and one that didn't pay dues. It's a real unique model.
And you wouldn't save the house? You wouldn't save the house that didn't pay?
They did
Oh,
not.
Lord.
And the reason is you couldn't afford. I know that's why you don't see that model anymore. It's almost everything has gone to a tax supported district because it's just now, if there was a life in danger or something like that, they would.
It's heartbreaking for you guys. I mean, if you see that, right?
It's horrible.
Yes.
It is because it's still our neighbors, it's still often people we know.
Did it happen to you that you were like in front of something in fire and they told you, nope, you can't go and help?
They would typically, because it'd come into the dispatch, and so we just never got dispatched to it. So if there was a fire that was not a member, quote unquote, of the rural fire department, we just didn't respond. So, and that's why it's foreign to most people. Even in this day and age, I don't know, there's only a handful
Of this
of
model.
departments in the country, that
Wow.
still have that model. Most of them are, again, they're tax supported, they're municipal, or they're what's called a fire district. So I left Mountain Grove and moved up towards Springfield and got onto the Logan Rogersville and it fire department, and it had just converted to a fire protection district. So that's a model to where that it's like a school district, and so it's not part of a city organization. Instead, it's a district that comes together. It assigns a tax to everybody who lives within that, and then that funds the fire department. So specifically, so
Oh.
I
So
joined
it's
that.
not it's not depending, sorry, I'm trying to understand.
Yeah,
So this would be a department that's not under a municipality, but it's under a tax program, correct?
correct. And it has its own board, a fire protection district board that gets elected by all of the residents that live within that district. And these are, again, you'll see these across the country. They vary state by state, but it's a fairly common model where you have fire protection districts.
Mm.
Yeah, and then you've got the municipal, which falls underneath a municipal structure that has the city council or whatever type of governance structure that they have. So there's really multiple models of how fire departments are funded and fit within a structure. So, that original one I was talking about, subscription, that's strictly a nonprofit organization that they set up for their mutual benefit and purpose.
And that would be volunteer firefighters.
It was, yeah.
It was at the time.
Yeah, and it is, and it typically that's what you see. It's made up of volunteers because our budget at that point was $15,000 a year, and
For the whole department.
for that entire department, and
Wow.
and we had a lot of like military surplus material, vehicles that they would give us, and we would put a tank on it. Things that we've learned are very dangerous that you may have because they're not properly equipped for it and all that. But that's what you did in order you could get that for free through the government at that time, and you could use those as to haul water and put out a fire.
And then when you moved to be a professional firefighter, that was a district system, a district
Yeah. So
fire department. Do you call it a district department? How do you call it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the first one I went to was Logan Roger Fire Protection District, and I was still a volunteer there. I only did that for a little bit of time, and before I got on Springfield, and then when I became a paid fire fighter, I was on a municipal fire department. So we tend to call them fire departments if they're part of municipal, and a fire district if they're part of just a special fire district. So I was part of a fire department, and I started as what we called a tailboard firefighter. And back then we actually did ride the tailboards.
What is a tailboard?
Oh, so it's so funny.
No, that's funny because I know I told you I'm going to ask a lot of stupid questions.
No, I love it. So if you think back to the old, where you watched Squad 51 or some of these old time movies, you used to see the firefighters riding on the back end of the fire engine and hanging onto the bar overhead. And they were riding on what's called the tailboard. It's that part that sticks out back, and you'd put your feet on there, and then you just hung on for dear life as you would be screaming down the road, and you'd hit bumps and your feet would come up off of it. And
are you doing the siren as well?
Well, the one up front, we're doing the sirens. So
no, because you could be screaming.
Oh,
like,
you
know,
could. Yes, it was quite an adrenaline rush and was as dangerous as you can imagine. Of course, every year you'd have firefighters who'd get killed
falling
from where they would fall off the fire engine. Yeah.
Oh,
So they start coming out and they put belts on them instead to hang on, but then they would overturn, and then you'd get, firefighters get killed getting squished underneath the fire engine. So it was a very dangerous occupation. We've improved so much. At that time, a lot of them didn't wear SCBA, which is the air packs, so that you could go in. Instead, they just cover their face. And
are you saying the mask thing?
The mask, yeah. Back then, when I started, they weren't originally wearing masks. I sound like I'm from the dark ages, but it really wasn't.
No, I love that. I mean, we have to talk about that because that's fascinating. You have decades of experience in the fire service.
Yeah, this was in the 80s, which is not that long ago. So we've just progressed so far and made it safer.
At least you didn't know the horse and carriage.
Yes.
And,
I fortunately, I was beyond that. But it was, and so we switched from riding tailboards into what we called the side pockets. They were they were seats behind the driver, and the officer tends to sit in the right front seat of the fire engines. That's the one typically. It's that company officer, that captain that sits there, and then the firefighters would be turned around backwards, and we were just sitting backwards and wearing seat belts. So once we moved off the tailboard, and we were facing backwards, but we weren't in the cab. And then, of course, now everybody's inside the cab.
I'm going to ask you, how do they sit? Because now, that's a good question. I have no idea.
Yeah. So these cabs are extremely large now on, Class A fire engines, where that you've got your driver, of course, we typically call them driver operators or engineers that are the one driving the engine or truck. And so you hear different terms. Again, we talk our own language. We talk about a fire engine is different than a fire truck, which is different than a ladder truck, which is different than a rescue or a rescue pumper. So you can get into
I'm
these
just laughing because Scott, that, the person that we have in common, actually called me and tried to explain to me, okay, this is a truck, this is an engine. I was very lost. And I'm like, okay, this is a lot of, I love it because I'm learning so much. So for the audience, I have no clue. I'm learning at the same time you're learning.
It is all a matter of semantics, but each one we're very specialized in all the things we do. And that's what makes us really good at it. So it's much like a basketball, or I'm going to say a football team. You've got your quarterback who does something. You've got your offensive linemen who are good at something. You've got your wide receivers that are good at something. They all play football, but they specialize. And so within the fire service, we're very specialized. So, the engine arrives and they're the ones that are going in with the water hose and putting out the fire. And then your truck company or ladder company, they're the ones with the big, tall aerial ladders typically that they can raise up. But they're the ones that are cutting holes in the structure, breaking windows and setting fans in order to blow all the smoke and heat out so that the engines can get into it. And of course, your rescue companies are going in searching for people. And, it's a very well orchestrated event. Everybody's flexible. They can all jump in and do somebody else's job. But as a general rule, you get
Stick
really
to your
good
role.
at it. Yeah.
Because you have to go fast. You have to go extremely fast.
That's right.
In the fire, yeah.
Yeah.
And so you were saying like how they're sitting now in the cabin, so they have space behind. So everybody is in the cabin now.
Yeah. So you've got your driver who's driving. You typically have the one who's in charge. Think of it as your supervisor. We call them lieutenants or captains. They're riding in that right seat that it's facing forward. When, again, early on, we faced backwards, the firefighters that were sitting in the back, we were right behind them, we'd face backwards. Well, now everybody sits inside, everybody faces forward. We have headsets that we all put on so we can hear each other talking between each other because it was so loud inside there, you'd have to yell with the sirens and the motor noise. So we'd be so now we've got headsets, we can hear the radio traffic, we can have the captains talk to us. And
so is the siren inside the cabin as loud as it is when you're outside in the street walking and you have to cover your ears?
It's not. And interestingly, as you've been around the business a while, I can be sitting, in traffic and I can hear a siren. I can say, oh, that's a police officer. Oh, that's an ambulance. Or no, that's a fire engine. You can tell because we use different types. Of course, we'd have our windows rolled up. So it was much quieter inside the cab. It wasn't, and that's part of the reason for wearing the headsets.
To protect your ears.
Correct, to protect our hearing. And but we use what's commonly called a Q siren that's on the front, and that's the one that you've got a button down there in the floor and you just mash down on it, and that's what causes it to wind up or down, and you can they're loud. So, and they've got electronic
They're loud.
sirens.
I mean, we know
Yes.
as normal people next to the truck, they are very loud.
Yes, they are. And of course, we have the air horns on it that we tend to use also. That anything that kind of, the reason that those oscillate and go up and down on the frequencies is that way it's more likely to draw attention to it whenever they do that. And so
with the horn, you said
there's
like
some science behind it.
like, on top of
Exactly.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot of vocabulary, a lot of structure. I'm also realizing how uh, almost military it is. Like, you have a lot of ranks and you have a lot of things. So talking
Yeah.
about the ranks, you went from
Yeah.
firefighter to fire chief. So can you tell us a little bit about the steps? We talked about how you joined as a professional firefighter, and when you joined, how did you evolve in your roles and to be a fire chief?
So I started again, as I say, is when I got on Springfield, I started as a what we called a tailboard firefighter. So basically, is a just your
Maybe you're gonna be
baseline.
dead in a year position.
Yeah, you hope not. Yeah, but so I started at that, and most fire departments will have that you have to serve a certain amount of time and experience before you're eligible for that next promotion. So typically that next one, what mine was, I was within position for 4 years, and then I promoted to the driver operator role. So I started driving the fire engines. Well, to me, is that wasn't a lot of fun. I mean, it was all right, but it's fun actually doing patient care, going in and putting out the fires, actually using the jaws of life, things like that. That's the exciting
So
part.
as the driver, as when you're the driver, so you went from firefighter to engineer, right?
Yep. Uh-huh.
So when you're an engineer, you're driving the truck. You don't do anything else but driving. I don't
Well,
know. It's a good question,
yeah, no,
maybe,
that's
but
a great question. So your primary purpose is to get them there safely, and then if there's a working fire, an actual fire that they're going to be pulling hose lines on, then your job is to get them water. So you've got to operate the pump in order to pull all the
so if you're
levers and
driving a truck
engage it.
that's gonna have the hose, right?
Yep, that you're going to be busy with that. If you're on a ladder truck, then you're probably going to be the one that's jumping up on it's the base of that big aerial ladder if they're using it, and you're the one running it from the bottom of there. So you may go in and help the others, but the general rule is you're going to be outside
You're not in
because
the
there's so much
action.
stuff to do out. You're not in the action. Yeah, you're there
I
help. You're
got you. I
doing
got
the
you.
support role. So that's the engineer. It's a some people is they absolutely love it, and you need to be good at it. It requires a lot of good technical, mechanical, spatial skills.
And you have to be a good driver, hopefully.
And you got to be, and it's a ton of fun driving fire engines,
Fast.
running emergency. Yeah, it is. It's a huge amount of responsibility. But the thing is, most people are there splitting and they're getting out of your way. So it's actually easier to drive a big truck like that emergency than it is non-emergency because you have more room. So
So if there's an accident, for example, what does an engineer do? Because you just told me how, in case of a fire, then they use if it's hose or ladder or like helping everybody to be, getting into action. What does the engineer do in an accident situation?
on an accident, they're going to be doing things like as if you need, medical gear, they're going to be pulling the medical gear. They're going to provide the jaws of life. Of course, they're going to be setting their engine in a way in order to deflect traffic away and protect and kind of create that cone of safety for the firefighters that are actually working there on the accident. So that's our first priority is getting it properly set the vehicle to protect them and then setting out cones back up the road so that it starts diverting traffic over. They've got a lot of work.
How long have you been an engineer?
So I was only an engineer for less than 2 years, and I promoted to company officer. So at that point, we called him a truck captain. It's equivalent. Most people call him a lieutenant, and that's now what we call him here in Springfield. So I promoted to the lieutenant position, frontline supervisor. I did that for a year, and then I went to captain, moved up into a full captain's position. So I managed all of the day-to-day activities of a fire station on one of the shifts that was assigned there.
So as a lieutenant, what do you do? I'm more familiar what the captain does because Jeff explained to me. But now,
Yeah,
before, when you're a lieutenant, you don't drive anymore. Or you drive? You still
you
drive or no?
you do not. Yeah. So what if you think of it is I'm an apprentice captain, and I'm assigned to typically what you'll see is there's a captain assigned to a station, and you might have an engine, a truck, and a rescue company maybe even a battalion chief assigned to a station. So you're going to have a captain that's in charge of the station and riding one of the vehicles, and then you're going to see a lieutenant who's the officer of one of the other vehicles.
You sub captain.
That's right. It really is. For a layperson, it is exactly what they do.
So then you were working with a captain, and did the captain retire, or is it like a promotion that you got?
Yeah, so on ours, you take promotional tests for each one of these. Once I moved to the truck captain or lieutenant's position, on our system, the way it works is we have so many and they just automatically rotate up to captain as captains either retire or promote up. So that was just a matter of how much time it took in order to do that, because again, it's kind of a pre-captain level.
When you're saying our, you talking about Missouri or?
That was there at Springfield specifically. Every department does that
Every
differently.
department is different. Okay, I see.
Yeah. So I got to station captain, and I did that for a period of time, and then they created a new position that was a fire marshal rank, and it was a special assistant to the chief, the administrative battalion. And so I worked on special projects like our ISO ratings, our accreditation. So special.
So you're moving from working in the station to be more like in the administrative side of things.
Yes.
So you're not a firefighter. You're not a fire. Sorry, let me rephrase that. You're not in the action anymore.
And that was one of those things. It was a struggle because I loved being in that environment and actually going out and responding to calls. So I stayed down there a couple years, and then I transferred back into the station as a captain. So that's where I kind of got back into that. It was a great experience having done all of that, and we upgraded our ISO rating during that, which lowers people's insurance rates, our citizens' insurance rates. And so then I went back out to the station. So that was a great experience to prepare me as I moved up later on in my career.
So it was like 2 days, and then you were working 2 full days, 48 hours, or how did you work?
Yeah, in Springfield, whenever I was on the department, they worked 24 hours on. So our shift came on at 7 in the morning. You get off at 7 the next morning. And then you were off for 48 hours. So 2 days, and then you come back. So you worked every third day. Now, since then, and I know many departments have done this, they've gone to a 48-96 schedule, which is you work 48 hours in a row, and then you're off so basically 2 full days, and then you're off for 4 full days.
And it's kind of a rotation, the same thing
Correct.
that Jeff explained to me. Yeah, okay. For you, it was a full 24 hours, 2 days, 24 hours, 2 days, and so on. What do you prefer? Do you know? Have you done the 2 systems or just the 24 hours?
I did not. And some people love the 48-96. Some people don't. Or the 24 on, 48 off. I will tell you, I loved listening to Jeff because it brought back so much of the fire service is the same everywhere. The things always break whenever you're at work. And so your spouse learns to take care of it. Yep. And so, and yet at the same time my wife would tell me is it's really nice having one night that I can just do whatever I want and sleep and not have to worry, so she kind of enjoyed that whenever my time at the station too. So it was a nice balance.
I was going to say, it's kind of nice for the other person too, because you have your whole, space for a little bit.
Exactly. So
I'm guessing that's not a bad thing in a couple. That would be another conversation. But I feel like it can actually be a win-win situation for, conflicts.
It's certainly. And I found that is that now not every spouse adjusts well to that, and often it's a younger, newly married couples. Sometimes that can be stressful on their marriage, but certainly, as my experience was, it was great for both of us. Enough time together and enough time away that you could really enjoy that.
Have the girls' night.
Yes, exactly. That's what happened.
So after you were fire captain, So you were fire captain, then you
Mhm.
were fire
Yep.
marshal for a while, then you went back to being a captain, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. And before that, so
Oh,
there's
before
another
that,
step.
sorry.
Yeah. The first step is so a captain oversees a station. Then I went to a battalion chief position.
Battalion chief.
And
Yes.
so the battalion chief supervisor here in Springfield, it would supervise half the city, which was 5 stations. So you'd have 5 stations that reported you. You'd respond to calls. You're the one that are making strategic decisions. Of course, first thing you're doing is figure out what kind of staffing do you have and who's sick, who needs to be moved around, things like that. But you were really the person in charge. You ensured people were getting their training done. Most people think of it's a manager level position. Captain is a supervisor, whereas
But
a
you're still in the
battalion's a
action?
manager. You're still in the action.
As a battalion chief, you're still in the action?
You are, and the fact is, you're still responding to fire scenes, but your role changes. So now you're standing outside, which is probably the hardest job on the fire department for a couple reasons. One is you're bridging between administration and the frontline staff, which is always a challenge because they have two different perspectives and stuff. But also is now you're not putting on the air pack and going in on the calls. You have to stand outside and you're responsible. So even though you can't see what's going on, you're responsible for the lives of the people that you're sending into that because you're making a decision when they go in and when they don't go in and where and all that kind of stuff.
Wow. So is it a very stressful position? I'm guessing.
It can be extremely stressful as part of that. So it's, particularly on the bigger fires, they tend to be the best at strategy and tactics because that's what they do every day is
Strategy.
they respond to so many calls. It really becomes, it's like another day in the office. You're going to work, you've got a fire in front of you. And that's why you can hear these very calm radio reports even under very stressful situations because you're very disciplined. It's like, okay, I'm at work again. It's just, we've got another fire. Here's what we need to do on this and this.
As a battalion chief, so you only work with fires? You don't work with accidents or other events?
Yeah, so you tend not to go on medical calls unless you happen to be close by. Then you'll stop at one. We call it jumping the call. You don't go to regular, what I consider a minor accident, but if there's one where somebody's trapped, then we would send a battalion to that because a battalion chief's role is managing multiple supervisors. So whenever you've got somebody trapped, you're going to have a rescue company there, maybe two, and you're going to have an engine, you're going to have a ladder company. So you're there coordinating all the activities going with more of a major. So really a battalion chief is going to more significant calls. They're not going to the more, and I say minor call, not meaning that they're not important.
If there's only one station involved because it's just a simpler accident, just one car, just one family, then you don't need to coordinate other stations. I get it.
That's exactly right.
And have you done other like hazmat or other kind of events that you had to be coordinating as well? Not only fires, or did you only deal with fire?
We call them, special operations. So on hazardous materials incidents, the battalion was there because you have multiple units that are there. You're trying to coordinate. You've also, we would go to water rescues. I'd served on our water rescue team whenever I was a firefighter and a company officer. So, any of that special operations type activities, high angle rescue, things like that. So anytime you get into something technical, because what you need extra margins of safety because they're such high risk. So you want a chief officer there helping ensure everything's covered.
So what would be a water incident? You mean like a boat issue?
Yeah, swift water. We had two different types. We had actually more than that, but you tended to have like a car who's crossed we call it a low water bridge. It's an area to where the road dips and you drive across, and normally the water goes under it through the culverts, but instead it's coming over it. They think they can drive across it, and the car gets washed along with its occupants. It gets washed down the road. So now you take your boats out and
That's
scary. And it's extremely dangerous. It always happens at night. It's always cold. It's very miserable conditions. And so that's a risk. The other is what we call a static rise flood. So basically, this is just flooding that gradually comes up, and now you are in your home, and now you're trapped, and you're getting on top of your house, and so we would go rescue them,
Mm.
and then you'd have ones where that it would be a dive rescue situation. So a car goes off into a body of water.
Jump from a bridge or
Yep.
something.
And so then you're going to look for and try to, hopefully be able to remove them.
Survivors, yeah.
Yep, survivors. And if not, it was often a body recovery.
So do you have a lot of water? And sorry, I'm not very familiar with Springfield.
Yeah, so we do. We've got a lot of lakes. Now, we didn't necessarily cover those, but it really is, we're here in what's called the Ozark Mountains. It's not what people would think of a mountain if you're from out east or west, but it's the Ozarks Plateau. And so it's got lots of hills, and so it has lots of creek and runoff with our limestone topography. And so we'd have a lot of flash flooding, or you'd have low spots that, it's outside the city of Springfield. It's a fairly rural area, so you'd have a lot of these low water crossings where they just drive across the creeks in low water. So very dangerous.
Yes, I'm like, I don't know if I would love to have those roads, but yeah.
Yes, and they're a lot of fun in the winter.
Like, So after you were battalion chief, that's when you became a fire chief.
Well, not yet.
Not yet.
So
Okay, I'm stepping another step. I'm sorry.
You are one more. So the next rank, again, we're a very hierarchical organization, just like
I
the
love
military.
it. Like I need to be reminded.
Yeah. I moved to assistant fire chief at that time. So within Springfield, we had 3 assistants. We had the assistant chief of operations, which ran all the fire stations on all the shifts. So they were the emergency response. Then you had the fire prevention, assistant chief fire prevention, which ran all the fire codes, the fire inspections, public education. And then you had the training, assistant chief of the training, which and support. So like the fire apparatus mechanic. I had moved in originally over all the fire prevention division. So I had all of that as assistant chief. Then I went to operations. So that's a lateral move. And then ultimately, as I was an assistant chief a long time, and then I promoted to fire chief.
So how long were you an assistant chief?
I was assistant chief for, 3 years. I think I had 2 years in fire prevention and 1 year in operations.
So not too long.
Not too long.
What is the role that you stayed the longest in? Fire chief?
Was fire chief. Yeah, I was fire chief for over 7 years. And so I promoted to fire chief at when I had 20 years on the job there in Springfield. And so I had a fairly fast career track that moved me up. And part of that was we had changes in our pension system. When I came on, it took 35 years in order to get your maximum pension. By the time I retired, that had been all the way down to 25 years. So we started seeing many of those who'd have more years of service. They were quickly retiring, so we became a much younger fire department, so to speak.
I mean, I'm guessing that it's very dependent on the location and how the dynamics works, because it depends on what people you have around you. So when you were an assistant chief, you were in an administrative role, right?
Correct. Yep.
So did you have any regret at that time? Because you already went back to being a captain because you wanted more action. So what happened? What change happened in your life that you were like, oh, now it's going to be my, management hat?
So here's what I really found, and I saw this about myself as I was progressing through things. Particularly when I went to battalion chief, that's when it really dawned on me. What I like is I love the job of frontline of captain working in the station. But when I went to battalion chief, I had greater ability to impact those that worked for me. And then when I went to assistant chief, I had greater ability to be able to impact even more people. And as fire chief, I had the ability to impact more. So what I found is it was less about, while I enjoyed going to calls and making a difference. What I found is I can make a bigger difference the higher up that I ended up being in the organization. So, I treasured all that time spending running calls. As a matter of fact, even as fire chief, I would go out and spend time in the station at times just to be able to get to run calls along with them. And, but I recognized is the best way I could have an impact both on our department, meaning the members within it, and how I could hopefully make it better for them, but also as our community as a whole, I could impact more lives as I had a broader scope of responsibility.
And when you go into a fire chief position, or even before, when you get into a battalion chief, when you get to be a little bit like on top of things and organizing and being responsible for other people's work, does the relationship that you have with the other members of the fire service change? Do they look at you like the boss? And
yes. Yeah, that's a good observation. That's one of the things a lot of individuals who promote up don't realize. It can be lonely. I say lonely at the top. You have to make hard decisions, and at times you have to make unpopular decisions as you move a department or organization forward. You've always been very active with everybody, and they get to know you less and less. So whenever I was out in the station, I knew every person on our department, a couple hundred people. As you promote up, I interact, and I interacted with them regularly. As I promoted up, I started interacting with fewer and fewer because there's more layers between you and them. So whereas when I was a captain and even a battalion chief, all the ones working for me personally knew me. As you promote a fire chief, then you become, as you've got new people coming on, they know of you. And yes, you'll go out and you introduce yourself and you visit with them. But the reality is they don't really know who you are. And so it is more challenging, and again, but you've got your group of leaders that are around you, your chief officers that you work with. And again, you try to keep those connections. So I regularly went out and visited with the stations and again, keeping those connections.
Is it easy to keep the trust? Do they share with you what they, live on daily if you're not at the stations anymore?
It is hard. And, the fire service tends to be very heavily unionized. So, we had 100% of those that were in the bargaining unit were members of the union. I was an officer in the union whenever I was eligible, even became a state vice president in the union. So I understood the union perspective. But as you move to management, so chief officer level, your responsibilities change. And while you're still looking out for your people, the reality is ultimately is you've got missions to accomplish and how it is that we best do that. So now you're negotiating on the opposite side of the union. And while 95% of what the union wants, management also wants, you still have 5% that they don't agree on. So
yeah,
it is a challenge.
So when you think about all those roles that you had, do you have one role that you still have in your heart as your favorite, or did you like all of the roles and you just have like the pro and cons on every single of them? How do you feel like when you reflect on your career and that you're retired?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It's both, actually. If I had to pick, I would have a hard time deciding whether I enjoyed being a captain more or the fire chief more. And I enjoyed them all. There's not one, even engineer, I enjoyed because I wanted to do really good at what I was doing. And there's so much to that job. Every single one of the jobs I enjoyed. But if I had to pick two, these would be the two. Truly, if I was given hey, you get to repeat these years of your life, which one would you do? Would it be a captain or the fire chief? It would truly be a coin toss to me because I enjoyed them both so much. Yeah.
I love that. And then you, when you retired, did you retire because of, age? Did you retire because you decided to, or did they make you retire? How did it happen?
Great question. So, our the way our retirement system works, we hit our maximum amount of pension that we can get when we've worked 25 years. So the reality is, if you work beyond 25 years on the department, there's only a marginal impact on your retirement system. So many people will choose to leave at 25 years, work a different job where they get the pay basically as they're getting their retirement and they're getting the other. Um, I became fire chief at 20 years on the job. I'd worked, already been fire chief 7. I had planned to work to 30 years, even though and the reason I stayed beyond 25 is I loved what I was doing. Why would I leave a job I'm enjoying? Some things you don't do for the money, you do it because you enjoy it and you feel like you're having an impact.
You can't keep it. They don't make you go.
That's right.
Okay.
And I plan to work on beyond that 25 years, and I did for a few years, and I plan to work till 30, but I didn't want to stay too long because there's other people who want to promote, and there's other people who want to be fire chief and assistant chief. So I'd set a limit that I wouldn't stay.
This pressure.
That's right. But I happened to be at a training class, and the university mentioned about a new position they'd created of emergency preparedness manager. And so I went ahead and left it 28 years and moved over to the university at that time. So I did not have to retire. I could have worked another, if I'd wanted, I could have worked 6 more years before I hit mandatory retirement. But the time was perfect.
So there is a mandatory retirement time.
Yeah, there is there was. So at that time it was age 60. They've since closed that pension system, and now all the new ones come onto a statewide system, and there is no mandatory retirement age on the statewide system.
So there could be an older fire chief.
There could be, yeah. At my time, you could only be 60.
Would you recommend it?
There is a point to where that. So let me just say is I would not want to be out working in a station doing the physical demanding tasks they were doing. Beyond, if I would have left at age 55 from the station because of the nature of their job. As a fire chief, you can probably work. I mean, you can work longer than that, but there becomes a point to where that. Not that you can't have a good fire chief that's 65 years old, I don't, or even 70 years old, but it does become progressively harder, and it all depends on the type of department. So if you're up responding calls all the time because it's a smaller department, that's very different than if you're at a metropolitan department and you never get called out at night. So it really kind of depends.
Thank you. Well, that's extremely interesting. So we went through all your journey, which is like a very long and interesting journey because you went through all the steps. And in that time, so you said you were out. Now I want to know about your personal life, if you don't mind. So you
Okay.
married very young, you said. How old did you said in high school, which is unusual. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe it was not at the time in Missouri, but to me it sounds like, oh, wow.
Yeah. It was too young. So I was 17 years old, and my wife and I got married. We had a first little one right away, and a couple years later, we had our second little one after that. It was hard times, and it's a challenge. Now, I will say, as hard as that was when you're young, particularly having little ones right away, you're not able to really develop as a couple. It makes now the benefit is whenever you have grandkids. I was 36 years old whenever I became
Wow.
a grandpa. My daughter got
Sorry.
married at 18.
What?
Actually, it was perfect. So I was still in the station, so I got to babysit my 2 oldest grandchildren. Because I was off 2 days at a time.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter could work and not have to have a babysitter, and then I got to babysit our grandkids. And so it was a very rewarding in that because we were so young whenever, we had our grandchildren. It was hard. I don't know that I recommend it necessarily, but also I see others that, they may be, they'll be older and then their kids, they'll have grandkids whenever they're not until they're in their 70s. So
So yeah, you enjoyed your grandkids a little better
yeah,
this way. So if you want to enjoy grandkids very young, then have babies very young.
yes.
Yeah, that's what your statement is.
Yeah, I don't necessarily recommend that. It's like give it a few years and then have them where you're, young enough, but not necessarily as young as I was. So,
So how many grandkids do you have?
oh gosh, we've got 7 grandkids in total. We have 5 biological grandkids, and then 2 through my daughter's second husband. He had 2 of his own, so we end up with 7 of them. And I've got one who just enlisted for to go into the Marines. So we're sure proud of him and excited about that.
So no great grandkids yet.
No great
You could.
grandkids. Yes, we could, because my oldest granddaughter, I mean, she's 27 now. So that's crazy. I mean, I don't feel that old. So,
So would you be ready now for the new generation to babysit the great grandkids?
I would. I love kids. I have taught pre-K at our church for 20 plus years. These are 4 and 5 year olds.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you about. So are you a teacher? Do you have a license as a teacher to teach the kids, or?
Nope, you don't have to be licensed. So this is through our church as a Sunday school class. So it's
Oh,
once
it's
a
the Sunday
week, and
school.
yeah, so it's not like every day. I don't have time to do
I
that.
was
Nor
like, oh my God,
I don't
how
have the
many
patience
careers
to do
does he
it.
have?
Yes, but it's fun. Little kids are fascinating. They're just such sponges, and they're so alive, and so I really enjoy kids.
How old are they, the ones that you're teaching?
Typically 4 and 5 year olds.
Yeah,
So
cute.
you see their personalities come out, and you see those that are very quiet, and you see those that are very outgoing. And of course, at that point they will say anything. And their parents would probably be mortified that if they knew that what their kids tell at Sunday school, but it is so funny.
So you know everything about everyone. That's
We
what
d-
you're saying.
we do. My wife now teaches with me in that. Beth has been doing this now with me for 15 years probably. We've been doing it together, so it works out well. So I'm a big kid at heart, so it works out well. She's more of a structured person, so because she did used to be a teacher, so she would be one who keeps the kids in line and make sure that we're not doing anything too rowdy.
So what do you teach in the Sunday school?
So ours is, we go to Ridgecrest Baptist Church. So, we're just teaching, what you consider your normal Bible stories that you have every week. So really teaching them about the Bible. And
Do the kids know that you were in the fire service?
at times they do. And at some point they always do, because, at some point I'm always going to be one who's going to teach people about fire safety, because I've seen the devastating effects of it. So at some point, I'm going to talk to them about fire safety. Typically, I'll bring in my gear and I'll show it to them, as we've got a lesson that's kind of related to that. So we'll. They typically do. To them is, they're like, okay, yeah, that's kind of cool, but I'm really more concerned about my dinosaur. And do you know the dinosaurs, or do you know the current princesses? So I got to keep up with my 5-year-old culture items, so I can speak their language.
That's cute. So that's a great a transition to my question about what would be your biggest advice to people listening, like as a firefighter and as a fire professional.
I think 2 things. First of all is the fire service is a great career. If you know someone, it's fascinating. And the fact is, it's not just, a bunch of big, physically fit guys dragging hoses in, squirting water. That's not, it is about, I love going to, I'd have teachers invite me into the classroom to teach. Hey, we use chemistry, we use geometry, we're using physics. I mean, there's so many sciences, that principles of sciences that you're applying because of, fluid dynamics with how smoke and heat moves and things like that. So it's really a fascinating. Firefighters tend to be extremely smart. They tend to be very mechanically oriented with good, hand spatial recognition. So if you've got an interest in something of that, you ought to consider it. It's a great career that can change your life. So that's kind of hey, if you know somebody, or if somebody out there is interested in doing that, go down and talk to them and look at applying. On the fire safety side, so the message I always leave is have a working smoke alarm. It truly saves lives. I just wrote an article on that in my newsletter about the importance of a smoke alarm. I have seen it firsthand. Most people, they think about somebody dying in a fire and that, they get burned. The reality is most people, whenever you go to a fire, they look like they're sleeping. And that's the ones that could have been saved with a working smoke alarm to have where they would have woken up. So I am a advocate of that, and really encourage. It is one of those things. It's easy to think what's the likelihood? That's what everyone says. Fire deaths are too high here in the United States, and that's something we need to work on. So a working smoke alarm is the most important thing we can do on that.
The number one for you would be that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, like on the side, we're talking about all the positive and the beautiful things about being a firefighter. There's also a little dark side of it, because you are going through a lot of fatal accidents, fatal fires. And how taxing is that? How do you deal with that on a daily basis?
There's two things that are really impactful long term in the fire service, and I heard you talk about each of these before. One is mental health. When I came on, it was hey, you suck it up. You didn't, it's, you're tough. There's, that's, we're macho. That's not the things that we do. We don't show weakness. Fortunately, that changed during my career to where we became much more aware and provided critical incident stress management, peer counseling, in order to reduce the likelihood of post-traumatic stress syndrome for the people working it. Frankly, you learn to keep that stuff, whenever you're at the scene, you're there, you've got a job to do, so you're really good about setting that aside and being able to focus on what has to be done. You compartmentalize. It's afterwards, and that's why it's so important in order to get that. Certainly there are things, that I wouldn't say I struggle with, but I still can't get out of my mind some of those memories that you have. And it doesn't impact my daily life, yet at the same time is there's some things you continue to remember, or there's something that will trigger that response whenever you see that. And that is very hard. It's very real. And we're seeing good changes in the fire service, as well as with legislation helping be able to provide the resource for that. The second one is cancer.
Yeah.
And that is the one I will tell you. I was listening the other day, and my assumption whenever I retired from the fire department is I'm going to get cancer. It wasn't really a question of whether I get it or not. It was just I wonder when, I wonder what kind it will be, because I know is the risk that goes with it. We've gotten so much better. Again, when I came on, we weren't always wearing air packs. I pretty much did from the very beginning, but we didn't take showers after fires. And it's absorbing through the skin. So you could still smell the smoke coming out of my hair and out of my skin a couple days later, even though you've showered a couple times. And because it gets into your system, not just breathing, but through your skin, it's absorbed. That's the real risk, particularly as these fires have become more dangerous in the types of things that are burning. the
Yeah.
chemicals that you're absorbing. So, I've been blessed so far. I've been, retired for 9 years now, and that's not something I've had, but I do regular screenings.
Mm-hmm.
I take care of checking my health and all that. And so for firefighters, it's so important, that we're doing the preventative stuff. Um,
Early on.
yeah, early on during your career, rather than having that is the feeling like is, well, you'll probably get it whenever you're after you're retired. And that's certainly not what we want.
And when you're retired, do they still offer you some follow up? Do you have a specific care because you were a firefighter, or
Yeah, they do not.
that would be
It's really
nice
it's on
to
my
have?
yeah.
Yeah.
It is, and it's really because it is an occupational exposure. I went to a fire to where that you could see this turquoise kind of floating, and come to find out it was where they redid solid state circuitry components. And whenever we got out, by the time it was 20 minutes later, time to go back in, it had eaten the gloves up, and I'd had a red rash across my forehead for it went on for months after that fire, where that again, I had it on my skin. Now again, I don't think there ended up being a long term, but that was all documented in case I ever did have something that would be attributed back to that. But it's just a risk, and we're much better about it in taking those protective measures, wearing our air packs whenever we're doing cleanup after a fire is put out and as we're cleaning up. So much
And
better.
so now you're doing a very different career, but it's related, right?
It is. So I moved as an emergency manager at the university. I'd taught at the university in the management department and political science, so I was very familiar. Graduated from there as well, so I'd had close ties. It's the largest university here in town, and went to work there. Became director of university safety, so I had everything from the security services of the campus, as well as the shuttle systems and parking and emergency management. And of course, I added in fire safety as part of that, and the law enforcement contract fell under me in that role. So it's still management and leadership, and it's related in the emergency services and stuff. And then ultimately, I did that for 7 years. And then recently, 2 years ago, I moved over to facilities. They'd asked me and see if I'd be interested in doing that. So now I do grounds, custodial, maintenance, property control. And again, it's coming from the fire service, you learn all kinds about construction, and I did construction on my days off. So it was really I'm a lifelong learner. I
That's
have
good.
had great opportunities, and so each one of these, it's exciting to me because I'm applying some of the skills that I know to new things that now I'm learning from people and on the technical side. So it's been just very enjoyable.
Are you gonna be retiring sometime, or you're like, yeah, I'm good. I want to keep working.
So I've told my boss I will continue to work as long as I'm enjoying it. And as soon as I don't enjoy it, you will know, because I won't work here anymore.
Nice.
So I really do, so we'll see.
Is it a full time?
It's a full-time job. Yep.
Wow.
I typically work 50, 60 hours a week. And again, I do it because I enjoy it. I do a lot of volunteer. What my next phase in life will be is I'll pass this on to someone else, pass the torch to move the ball on it, and then I'll probably go to part-time at that time, or just strictly volunteer work, as I say, quote unquote, retire. I'll never not be doing something.
Do
That's
nothing.
Right. That's just not in my nature.
I want to talk a little bit about your little hobby, because you told me you were doing a lot and you sent me
Yeah.
pictures and it looks beautiful. You do woodworking.
I do. I like to say my dad was in construction and as a carpenter, and my granddad, and so I come by some of that naturally, and I really kind of took it up. So I, just tinker. What I didn't tell you is I cut down the trees. I take them to the sawmill and take them to the kiln
from
scratch. So what you see, and most of these are like trees that have blown down due to storms, tornadoes, windstorms, snowstorms. So I'll come in and I'll cut the logs off of it, and then I take them to the mill and do all that. It's just it's neat. And I give virtually everything away. And because
To your family, to your kids? Who do you give it
yes, friends, people I work with. It's a big hobby. I sell some stuff, but I try to avoid doing that too much because then it becomes like work.
to?
And instead it's just a hobby I truly enjoy. So you get 3D cutting boards and all the way up to walnut conference room tables and stuff like that.
Beautiful. So the ones that I saw that have different colors, is it like do you put the different woods together, or is it the wood itself that has different veins?
Yeah, that is the wood itself. So I use different
Wow.
species of wood and I create that three-dimensional pattern. It's perfectly smooth. So if you feel that, it's just like smooth like glass on top. I don't use any stains of any type. It's just by knowing how you put different things together, it makes it looks like it has shadows and has a pattern in it. So I pick out my species based upon that, and everything in life is about the story, so whenever I give something, I typically will give them a picture of this is the tree it came from, and I show it where it's
Oh, I
down on
love
the
it.
ground. Some of these would be 4.5 foot. The trunks will be 4.5 foot across. So I bought me a big trailer, had to buy me a new truck with a big diesel motor in order to be able to
Oh,
pull my
that's a
trailer because
serious.
my logs were so big. Yeah, so it's a serious
It's a
hobby.
serious hobby. I know. It's like, oh wow. So do you go and like you take one day off and you go in the park and you just like try to find fallen trees, or do you have people who call you, "Hey, I have a tree for you"?
Yeah, I do. I have friends, and they'll be like, hey, my tree blew down, or I've got this tree I need to take down. We want to get rid of it. Are you interested in it? So my wife has said is no more until you use up some of the wood. I've built my
Where's
shop.
the wood? Where's the wood? Is the
It,
wood in the garage and there's no more garage?
so yes, and in the basement, and I bought a trailer in order to store it in. So I've got, I mean, thousands of board feet of wood. I've just picked up a couple more 1,000 feet of board feet of oak, from these huge logs that I've got. But it's so fun, and it's neat to see where this piece of wood was turned into this end product. So when I retire, I'll probably do more of that. But again, I don't want to make it into too much work. I want to make it where it's enjoyable. But yeah, most firefighters, when they retire, they get a payout for their sick leave they've accumulated and vacation leave, and they'll go buy a new pickup. Well, instead, I went to a place called Grizzlies, which is an industrial woodworking type place. Sells equipment. And so I went and just decked out my shop with all commercial size stuff. So it's a ton of fun.
That's good. That's great. So we were going to talk about the charity you want to feature today as a fundraising call. And are you involved with them? They're called Convoy of Hope.
I'm not directly involved Instead, is the reason I wanted to feature this is Convoy of Hope is headquarters here in Springfield, Missouri. And yet it is an international program, an international organization that goes out and supports those in need. I know people who work there and volunteer for them and go out across the country. I don't have time to. Maybe that's something I'll do in retirement. We'll see.
I don't know how you can have more time in your full time plus woodworker plus grandfather.
Yeah. It's
church.
I like being busy, as you can see. But I get up at 4 a.m. and because I'm ready to go, and I can't. And I've been like that since I was a little kid. So it's so we'll see what I do in the future. But Convoy of Hope, they respond to disasters in the U.S. And so you'll see them. They were out in Hawaii during those wildfires that they had. They've been out west during wildfires. They've been to down in Florida during the hurricanes, and then of course the recent flooding with down in Texas and then down in Tennessee. So whenever you start looking at it, it's a great organization, and Red Cross is also a great organization, obviously, that you think of disaster relief. But many people don't realize, they don't recognize Convoy of Hope and how big of an organization it is or how much work that they're doing in those times of disaster, which directly support the things that firefighters. So, that's one of the things is if you're not familiar with Convoy of Hope, I'd encourage you take a look at what they do and see if that mission speaks to you, and then how it is that it helps people.
Yeah, it's a beautiful organization, and I've seen that they've been doing a lot of stuff in Africa as well.
Yes. Frankly, is whenever I first became familiar, again, I've seen them grow a lot. That was really a lot of was their overseas work that I had seen. So, and then it's like, oh, wow, man, I started seeing it. Of course, we'd have stuff. I first ran into it during COVID, where I had direct work with Convoy of Hope was during COVID here locally. I always assumed it was just international responses. And it's like, oh, yeah, they were helping locally as well. And then as I started really paying attention, they're doing this all across the country and helping in disaster relief.
Yeah, it's a great mission. I'm going to share the links on our Facebook and Instagram pages. And I hope people are going to share what they do because it's a really great organization. Thank you so much, David. It was so interesting talking to you about the different steps and the different things. And there's so many other things we could talk about. And I hope we will one day, maybe part 2, because there's so many things we can talk about with you. Thank you so much, David. Thank you for being here with us today. And can't wait to see more woodwork.
Yeah, it was great talking to you. And I really appreciate having you. It's always fun sharing and really talking about the things that I'm passionate about. So I appreciate always getting a chance to have an audience.
Well, thank you, David.
Have a good day.
Okay, talk to you soon. Bye.